Chapter 24, in which a lady reflects upon her recent entanglements and seeks public context. The morning after felt a lot like jet lag. The world was moving at its normal pace, but Carrie felt disjointed, existing in a slightly different time zone from everyone else in the bustling Britannia restaurant. The light seemed too bright, conversations too loud, every sensation heightened yet somehow distant. Her body was here, but part of her mind was elsewhere, replaying moments from the night before in vivid detail. She stirred her coffee with unnecessary vigour, watching the liquid swirl into a tiny vortex in the bone china cup. Around her, the restaurant hummed with activity, silver cutlery chiming against plates, conversations rising and falling like the sea outside the windows. Waiters in crisp white jackets moved with purpose between tables, balancing trays of kippers, eggs, and toast. It was all so perfectly normal, so utterly separate from the night she'd just experienced.
Would Madam care to order breakfast?
A waiter materialized at her elbow, pad at the ready. Carrie glanced at the menu again. Full English breakfast, eggs Benedict, smoked salmon, pancakes with maple syrup. Her stomach fluttered at the thought of food. She felt too light, as if she might float away if she didn't anchor herself with something solid. "Just toast, please. Wholemeal if you have it." The waiter nodded, not quite hiding his disappointment at her pedestrian order. She suspected the chef's preferred guests who embraced the caloric magnificence of a proper breakfast. Her early morning walk back to her cabin had been both mortifying and oddly exhilarating. She'd crept along the corridors at 5 a.m., her formal gown draped over one arm, shoes in hand, feeling like a teenager sneaking home after curfew. Only one person had seen her, an elderly gentleman in a plush cunard bathrobe, heading to the spa for an early swim. He'd given her a knowing wink that had made her cheeks burn and her heart swell with secret delight. The memory of Crispin's fingers trailing down her spine was a ghost print she could still feel on her skin, raising goosebumps in her mind. The way his voice had softened in the darkness, the surprising strength of his arms as he'd held her. These were the souvenirs she would take with her tomorrow, when the ship docked in Sydney, and this brief, impossible interlude came to its inevitable end.
Mind if I join you?
Carrie looked up to find Thea Vance, the quiet fourth at their dinner table, standing beside the empty chair. She held a teacup in one hand, a small plate of fruit in the other. "Please," Carrie said, gesturing to the chair. "I'd welcome the company." Thea settled herself with the precise movements of someone who approached everything with quiet deliberation. In her early 40s, she had a self-contained elegance about her, hair styled in a neat bob and observant eyes that seemed to take in everything.
I missed you at dinner last night,
Thea said, arranging her napkin.
though I don't blame you for finding better company.
Carrie felt heat creep up her neck, the memory of Crispin's breath against her ear, whispering words that made her laugh and then sigh, flashed through her mind. She brushed it away. "I had a previous engagement."
With the British historian. Yes, I saw you both in the Queen's room.
Thea took a delicate sip of her tea.
You looked very well together. Quite the handsome couple.
"We're not a couple," Carrie said automatically, then winced at how defensive it sounded. Thea raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Instead, she speared a piece of melon with her fork.
The Allcrofts were full of stories about their trip to Kerala. I nearly expired from politeness.
Carrie laughed, grateful for the change of subject. "They are rather enthusiastic about their travels."
There's only so many times one can hear about the authentic local experience before contemplating a leap overboard.
Thea's eyes crinkled with dry humour.
It was rather lonely though. Formal night when you're travelling solo. Everyone else seemed to be paired off.
Something in Thea's voice made Carrie look at her more closely. There was a quiet resignation there, not self-pity exactly, but an acceptance of solitude that seemed beyond her years. "Is this your first cruise?" Carrie asked.
Oh no, I've done several. My husband and I used to sail every year. After he died, I kept up the tradition.
She glanced out the window at the passing coastline.
Different, of course, but still worthwhile.
I'm sorry about your husband.
It's been 3 years.
Thea's smile was gentle.
Life goes on even when you think it can't possibly.
The waiter arrived with Carrie's toast, along with a small pot of butter and assorted jams. She thanked him, suddenly ravenous.
You both looked so perfectly happy.
Thea continued, returning to the subject Carrie had hoped they'd abandoned.
Dancing together? I was quite jealous, I must admit.
She took another sip of tea, her eyes thoughtful.
A man like that, an academic with a bit of charm, they do cause a flutter on these trips. I've seen it before. Women find it very appealing.
Carrie fought against the label, the cliché of the lonely photographer and the charming married author. But the memory of his hand trembling as it touched her face was not a cliché. It was a truth, and it refused to be dismissed. Crispin's vulnerability in that moment, the unguarded wonder in his eyes, had been as real as the waves outside the window. "It's not like that," she said. But even to her own ears, the protest sounded hollow. Thea's smile was kind.
Of course not. Forgive me, I'm becoming a nosy woman.
She paused, adding in a gentler tone,
It is a strange thing, rediscovering oneself alone. Some of us lash ourselves to routine. Others find a new harbour, however briefly.
The words hung between them, laden with meaning. Carrie busied herself with spreading jam on her toast, unsure how to respond to such a gentle assessment of her situation. They ate in companionable silence for a moment. Then Thea glanced at her watch.
There's the panel discussion in the Royal Court Theatre at 10.
She said.
Genre fiction. That Maeve Penhaligon is speaking. And your historian too, I believe. It should be quite popular.
Carrie opened her mouth to repeat the now familiar denial. He's not my historian. But the words felt flimsy, untrue. Actually, I think I might go to that, she said instead. The idea of seeing Crispin in his professional element, surrounded by peers and admirers, suddenly seemed important. She needed to place their private moments in the context of his public life, to understand the entirety of him. Maybe then she could make sense of the disorientation she felt, this strange sensation of being both tethered and afloat.
Shall we walk over together?
Thea asked.
It starts in about an hour, but we should get seats early. These literary events are becoming battles over seating.
I'd like that, Carrie said, oddly grateful for the company and the purpose. As she reached for her cup, Thea added with a wry smile,
It is a truth universally acknowledged, I suppose, that a historian at sea must be in want of a new perspective.
The unexpected Austen reference made Carrie choke slightly on her drink. Thea's eyes danced with quiet mischief. Jane Austen fan? Carrie asked, dabbing at her lips with a napkin.
Devotee.
Thea confessed.
I brought all 6 novels with me. I've been rereading them in chronological order. Something about ships and Austen. They go together remarkably well.